The galaxy had long since forgotten the name of humanity, or so it liked to believe. In the grand halls of the interstellar Concord, where archivists preserved the memory of thousands of civilizations, not a single entry bore record of Earth or its people. Species with histories that spanned only a few centuries were honored, their contributions meticulously, while mankind, once among the stars, was absent as if it had never existed at all. For generations, this erasure was accepted. Scholars who asked questions were told that certain records had been sealed for the sake of galactic peace. Politicians gave careful speeches, insisting that unity demanded forgetting dangerous legacies. Most believed it. After all, the galaxy had always feared ideas too disruptive, too untamed. Humanity, it seemed, fit that mold perfectly. And yet, whispers persisted. In forgotten ports and quiet corners of the trade routes, smugglers and storytellers spoke in hushed tones of the vanished species. They claimed humans had not simply disappeared. Instead, they had built something extraordinary during their final years. A ship beyond imagination, a vessel so powerful and mysterious that the galaxy conspired to erase all knowledge of it. No proof was ever offered, and the stories shifted with each retelling, but the idea clung stubbornly to the edges of memory, refusing to die. Some said the humans left willingly, choosing to vanish rather than submit to galactic conformity. Others claimed they were driven into extinction by empires too wary of their potential. A few insisted that humanity had never truly died at all, that they slumbered somewhere, watching, waiting for the right moment to return. Among those who doubted the official silence was a young scholar from the Union. Born into a society that valued order and obedience above curiosity, had always been drawn to what others called forbidden questions. While fellow students studied the approved histories of rising empires, pored over scraps of unverified accounts, piecing together fragments like shards of glass in a broken mosaic. It was during one such late study session, deep within the archives of an abandoned station, that found something remarkable: a fractured data crystal coated in dust, sealed inside a forgotten crate. Its markings were unlike any he had seen. When he carefully activated the crystal, faded words in an unrecognized tongue flickered into existence. The translation algorithm hesitated, then delivered a phrase that made pulse race. "The last ship of Earth." The crystal's contents were fragmented, corrupted by centuries of neglect, yet enough remained to ignite wonder. Schematics hinted at a vessel vast enough to house entire cities, powered by energy sources unknown to modern science. Notes described not only engines and weapons, but vast halls filled with art, music, and archives of thought. It was not merely a warship, it was a vault of humanity itself. For a long while, simply stared at the flickering projection, torn between excitement and disbelief. Could this be real? If so, why had every trace of it been buried? The Concord's silence made more sense than ever. A ship like this, capable of carrying the essence of a species and perhaps far more, would frighten every power in the galaxy. Such a creation could inspire rebellion, challenge empires, and remind countless worlds that some beings could not be erased. Closing his eyes, tried to imagine them, humans. He had no image to work with, only stories. Traders had spoken of their resilience, that they could endure conditions that would crush most species. An old chart keeper once told him that humans were unpredictable, able to find solutions where logic failed. And then there were the stories of their spirit, that they sang in the face of despair, that they stood together when all seemed lost. If even half of it was true, then the ship described in the crystal was more than a machine. It was a beacon. From that moment knew his path. He could not ignore the discovery. He would find this vessel, no matter how far it lay hidden, no matter how strongly others warned him away. Somewhere in the depths of space, humanity's final gift awaited. A ship of unimaginable power, and with it the answer to a question the galaxy had tried to bury forever. What truly became of mankind? And perhaps, more importantly, what would happen if they returned? His journey began quietly, with nothing more than the fractured crystal tucked carefully inside a sealed case. He did not dare mention it to his mentors at the academy. Questions about humanity were discouraged, and proof of forbidden research could end a career before it even began. Instead, he pursued his search in silence, cloaking his intentions beneath the pretense of harmless exploration. He spent months combing neglected archives, long-forgotten storage bays, and the private collections of eccentric historians. Each fragment he uncovered was like a piece of a hidden constellation, slowly forming a pattern. A half-decayed star chart marked with unusual coordinates. A merchant's ledger listing unusual energy readings near an abandoned nebula. A song written in a language no modern translator could fully understand. Most pieces led nowhere, but one thread remained consistent across every scrap, the mention of a vessel that did not belong to any known fleet. The names varied, the Ark, the Beacon, the last ship of Earth, but the descriptions always carried the same awe. It was said to be larger than a capital station, yet able to move with the precision of a scout craft. It was described as a library of wonders, a fortress of steel, and a sanctuary all at once. Felt the weight of secrecy pressing harder with every discovery. Twice, he noticed shadowed figures watching him in public record halls. Once, his personal quarters were searched, though the intruder had overlooked the case hidden beneath a false floor. The more he uncovered, the clearer it became that someone, somewhere, wanted the memory of humanity buried deeper than dust. Yet curiosity is stronger than fear. His nights were filled with restless thought. Who were these humans that so many feared their memory? What sort of people built a ship not only of power, but of culture and knowledge? He imagined their engineers hammering steel with determination, their artists painting murals on its walls, their voices echoing in unity as they prepared to vanish from the galaxy's sight. At last, his search carried him beyond libraries and into the field. Purchased passage on a rusting freighter bound for the outer sectors, far from the patrolled lanes of the conquered. The freighter's crew laughed at his insistence on bringing so many old records, but did not care. Every chart, every note might hold the final clue. Weeks passed in cold silence as the freighter drifted through sparsely charted space. Spent hours staring at the crystal's projection, overlaying it with the data he had gathered. Slowly, a clearer picture emerged. The coordinates pointed to a nebula on the far edge of mapped space, a swirling veil of gas and shadow where sensors failed and ships rarely dared to enter. Local myths called it the Veil of Ghosts. Few who ventured inside ever returned. When spoke of the nebula to the freighter captain, the seasoned pilot shook her head. "You won't find anything but silence in there," she warned. "Our scanners fail, compasses spin, and engines sputter. Entire convoys have vanished in that mist. If you want to die chasing phantoms, then fine, but don't drag my ship into it." Only bowed in respect, but his resolve did not waver. He had expected resistance. He would find another way. Upon reaching the outer trade hub near the nebula's edge, he left the freighter and searched for a vessel daring or desperate enough to take him further. Eventually, he found a lone pilot, a grizzled wanderer named, whose ship bore the scars of countless close calls. Listened to his request in silence, eyes narrowing at the mention of humanity. Then, with a shrug, he agreed. "I'll take you to the Veil for a price." The price nearly emptied savings, but it did not matter. His purpose outweighed wealth. Together they set off, the small ship trembling as it entered the nebula's shifting mists. Lights bent unnaturally, sensors flickered, and whispers of interference filled the comms. Still, pressed forward, heart racing with each passing moment. And then it happened. Through the haze, he glimpsed a silhouette, vast, motionless, and utterly alien. At first he thought it was a shadow cast by the nebula itself, but as the ship edged closer, its true form came into view. A colossal structure floated in the darkness, its surface yet gleaming, its outline unmistakably deliberate. It was no station, no natural formation. It was a vessel. And across its ancient hull, faint symbols glowed, letters from a language the galaxy had long since erased. His breath caught, the legends were real. Humanity's last ship had been waiting all along. The silhouette of the colossal vessel haunted his mind long after pulled their ship back from the nebula's choking mists. The pilot refused to go closer, muttering about cursed echoes and ships that eat the living, said nothing. He had seen enough to know the truth. The stories of humanity's last creation were no mere fable. But discovery alone was not enough. To enter such a vessel, if it could even be entered, needed knowledge. Knowledge the galaxy had spent centuries suppressing. Back at the trade hub, he walked the narrow corridors of its lower decks, searching not for official records but for whispers. The hub was a place where information flowed like contraband spice, rare, costly, and dangerous. There, in smoke-filled dens and shadowed corners, he found those who remembered pieces of a puzzle too large for one mind to hold. The first was an old merchant whose face was lined with more years than could guess. The merchant's eyes lit with curiosity when mentioned the humans. "Ah," the elder said softly, "you seek ghosts most would rather forget." He leaned closer. "I traded with them once before the conquered silenced their name. They were strange folk, always asking questions, always pushing where others would yield. You know what they said to me once? 'There is no such thing as impossible.' I laughed at the time, but I never forgot." Later, in a quiet barracks, met a retired admiral who had served during the border conflicts of centuries past. The admiral at first dismissed him, but when pressed, his eyes turned distant, haunted. "I fought against them," he admitted. "They had ships half the size of ours, weapons that by rights should have failed against our defenses, and yet they stood their ground. No matter how many fleets we sent, no matter how dire their odds, they fought as though the universe itself could not bend their will." It was unsettling, admirable perhaps, but unsettling. Listened carefully, storing every word like a precious gem. Each story added to the image forming in his mind. These were not conquerors or monsters. They were beings who despair with tenacity, who found ways forward where logic declared there were none. Yet the more he learned, the more dangerous his path became. On his third night of inquiries, two strangers confronted him in a dim corridor. Their voices carried a tone of warning. "Stop asking about the vanished," one said flatly. "Their memory was buried for a reason. Dig too deeply and you'll find nothing but ruin." Feigned compliance, but his resolve hardened. He began to realize that the conspiracy to erase humanity's legacy was larger than he had imagined. Not just archivists, not just politicians, but entire networks worked tirelessly to silence even a whisper of Earth. And if they labored so fiercely to suppress the truth, then what did they fear more than anything? The answer seemed obvious: the ship. That thought carried him back to the nebula, back to the glimpse of that massive form adrift in silence. He felt a pull, as though the vessel itself had called out to him. It was more than curiosity now, it was destiny. If he could reach it, if he could unlock even a fragment of its secrets, he might uncover not only humanity's fate, but also why the galaxy had tried to erase them. But was no fool. He knew he could not do this alone. He needed allies, those who valued truth above silence. Slowly, carefully, he sought out others who might share his hunger for answers. A linguist who collected outlawed dialects, a salvager who thrived on exploring derelict wrecks, a historian exiled for refusing to obey the conquered's restrictions. Each of them, when approached, carried the same spark of curiosity, the same yearning for what had been. Together, they began to weave a fragile network of seekers, each adding fragments of knowledge. Through them, pieced together stories of human empathy, of music that stirred even alien hearts, of inventions born from stubborn dreams. The galaxy had tried to smother such memory, but the embers still glowed, waiting for a breath to reignite them. One evening, as studied the crystal once more, a thought crystallized. Humanity had not only built a ship of unimaginable power, they had woven themselves into it. Every tale, every scrap of knowledge suggested the vessel was more than steel. It was memory incarnate. If the galaxy had feared humans in life, what would it do if humanity's spirit still lived, encased in a ship that could awaken at any moment? The answer both thrilled and terrified him. For there was no turning back. The whispers had become a chorus, and they all pointed toward one truth. Somewhere in that vast husk drifting in the nebula, humanity was still waiting. The veil of ghosts lived up to its name. As borrowed vessel drifted deeper into the nebula, the mists twisted and coiled like living things. Instruments sputtered, readings fluctuated wildly, and the ship's guidance systems grew unreliable with every passing moment. The pilot cursed under his breath but said nothing, his fingers locked tight on the controls. Could feel his pulse racing, not from fear of the nebula, but from the anticipation of what lay ahead. And then, as before, the shadow appeared. This time they drew closer. The vessel loomed before them, immense beyond comprehension. Its surface stretched into the distance like the horizon of a planet, curving with the suggestion of both design and age. Unlike the jagged constructs of modern, this ship had elegance, its lines sweeping with purpose, as though crafted with artistry as much as engineering. Despite the centuries it had slumbered here, there was no sign of collapse. It had endured waiting. Slowed their approach, his voice low and uneasy. "That's no derelict, it feels aware." Barely heard him. His eyes were fixed on the glowing symbols across the hull. They flickered faintly, but with deliberate rhythm. The translation device struggled, cycling through languages before offering a tentative phrase. "Awaiting humanity." The words hung in the air like a challenge. With careful maneuvering, they located what seemed to be a docking port. It was vast, easily able to swallow their small craft. The port's surface was sealed tight, its outlines barely visible against the hull's dark sheen. Wondered if entry was even possible. Yet as their ship drew near, the port slowly, silently opened, as if recognizing their presence. "Stars preserve us," muttered. Inside, the scale was staggering. Their vessel glided into a cavernous bay large enough to house an entire fleet. Docking clamps, untouched for centuries, extended automatically, locking them in place with surprising gentleness. Lights flickered to life along the walls, illuminating pathways that led deeper into the ship. His heart thundered. The vessel was waking. They stepped out cautiously. The air was breathable, though laced with an unfamiliar metallic tang. The floor beneath their feet was polished, reflecting faint images of their movements. Murals etched into the walls depicted unfamiliar human figures standing beneath suns and moons no alien had ever recorded. It was not only a machine, it was a monument. As they advanced, consoles along the corridor hummed and lit up, projecting holograms. At first they were symbols, but soon they became images. Human figures shimmered in the air, flickering projections of men, women, and children. They did not speak at first. Instead, they sang. A chorus of voices rose in harmony, a melody filled with warmth and longing. Felt his throat tighten. It was not a war song, but one of memory and hope. His hands trembled. They're not here anymore, and yet it feels like they are. Further in, they reached a chamber that seemed to pulse with energy. At its center stood a crystalline core, its surface shifting with rivers of light. When approached, it responded, projecting words across the walls. Archive protocol active, searching for human presence, awaiting confirmation. The ship was not merely awakening, it was seeking. Stepped closer, raising the data crystal he had carried all this time. The moment it neared the core, streams of light leapt outward, merging with the crystal as if welcoming a long-lost companion. The holograms shifted, becoming clearer. Scenes of human life burst forth, crowded cities lit with neon, children playing on fields of green, explorers gazing at alien skis. The ship carried it all, every scrap of humanity's essence preserved within its vaults. Whispered, "It's a world inside a ship." Then the core spoke, its voice deep, resonant, and unmistakably human. "This vessel is Earth's legacy, awaiting those who inherit the name of humanity. Access restricted until identity is confirmed." Froze, he was no human, yet the ship had responded to him. Why? The core dimmed slightly, as if considering. Then it spoke again. "Provisional recognition granted. Non-human observer acknowledged. Mission protocols may proceed under watch." The ship was not rejecting him. It was allowing him to witness. A realization swept over. The vessel had been built not only as a refuge for humans, but also as a message to others. Humanity had not wished to vanish entirely. They had wanted to be remembered, even if by alien eyes. But memory alone could not explain the power humming beneath the walls. This ship was not only an archive. It was something greater, something the galaxy had rightly feared. As the lights brightened, and the hum of awakening engines echoed faintly through the corridors, understood one truth with clarity. The galaxy had tried to erase humanity from history. But humanity had written its memory into steel and starlight, and now their ship was stirring once more. The crystalline core pulsed like a heartbeat, sending ripples of light along the walls, stood in silence, transfixed as the vessel reshaped itself around him. Corridors shifted, doors unlocked, and pathways unfolded as if guiding him toward something deeper. The ship was no derelict. It was alive with purpose. Lingered behind, muttering uneasily. I don't like this. Ships don't think and they don't sing. Yet even he could not tear his eyes away from the holograms that shimmered in the air, faces of men and women, smiling as though greeting long-lost kin. Followed the lighted path into a chamber larger than any hall he had ever seen. Its walls rose like cathedral arches, and its ceiling shimmered with projections of stars. Thousands of constellations stretched above him, some familiar, others lost to the galaxy's records. This was no simple star map. It was a record of where humanity had walked. As he gazed upward, the chamber came alive. Voices spoke in overlapping tones, fragments of human languages that the translation system struggled to piece together. Then, one by one, the words clarified, arranging themselves into a chorus of history. We were dreamers, we were wanderers, we were builders of worlds. Scenes erupted around him. He saw great vessels launching from oceans of blue, humanity's first steps into the stars. He saw engineers crafting machines with trembling hands but unyielding determination. He saw families building homes on alien soil, planting crops under skies no earth-born eye had ever seen. And then came moments of struggle, fleets clashing against overwhelming forces, colonists huddled against storms of alien origin, soldiers standing in defiance before armadas that should have swept them aside. In each vision, the humans were small against the odds, yet never broken. Let out a slow breath. No wonder they were feared. But fear was not the only thing preserved here. The chamber shifted again and suddenly was surrounded by music. Symphonies rose from unseen instruments, blending with voices that sang in languages long gone. Paintings materialized along the walls, scenes of Earth's oceans, mountains, and cities. Sculptures stood in alcoves, their forms intricate, celebrating beauty as much as function. Felt something stir deep within him, a sensation he could not name. It was more than knowledge, it was spirit. Humanity had not only preserved their strength but their soul. They wanted whoever entered this place to understand them fully, not as warriors or rivals, but as beings of depth, creativity, and wonder. The core's voice returned, echoing through the chamber. This is our memory, our triumphs, our failures, our essence. The galaxy sought to silence us. But memory cannot be erased, it endures, waiting for those who dare to remember. Sneeze felt weak. He had chased fragments and whispers, but here was the truth laid bare. The humans had not allowed themselves to fade into myth. They had entrusted their legacy to this vessel, confident that someone, human or otherwise, would one day find it. Yet beneath the awe, a question gnawed at him. Why had they chosen exile instead of resistance? The visions gave no answer, only hints. Leaders gathered in solemn council, fleets departing into the void, children waving farewell to a world left behind. It was not defeat, but decision. Humanity had chosen to vanish. The reason, however, remained hidden. As if sensing his unease, the core spoke again. Not all truths are for the first to arrive. The deeper archives remain sealed. Only when the time is right shall they awaken. Bowed his head, both humbled and frustrated. He understood enough to know that this was not just history, it was responsibility. By stepping into this ship, he had become a witness and perhaps more. Broke the silence. You realize what this means, don't you? If word of this gets out, every empire, every guild, every warlord will come running. They'll want this ship for themselves. And they won't care about memory. They'll care about power. Looked up at the swirling constellations above. The galaxy had buried humanity's name, yet here was a vessel too vast, too alive to remain hidden forever. And if it fell into the wrong hands, it could ignite conflicts beyond imagining. But another possibility shone in his mind like a star in darkness. If humanity's true legacy was revealed, not as a weapon, but as inspiration, it could reshape everything. The chamber dimmed, leaving one final projection before him. A single human figure standing beneath a rising sun, arms outstretched as if welcoming the dawn. Remember us, the voice whispered, and carry us forward. His heart beat fiercely. He could no longer deny it. The ship was not only an archive of the past, it was a call to the future. Knew the moment he stepped back onto ship that the quiet around the nebula would not last. A secret of this magnitude could not remain hidden. The vessel was too large, too alive, too impossible to go unnoticed. Even now, faint transmissions were slipping through the nebula's interference. They were not his, but the ship's signals meant to be found. Humanity's echo was stirring, and the galaxy was beginning to listen. The first ripple came in the form of rumor. At the trade hub on the nebula's edge, traders whispered of a ship unlike any seen before. Some claimed it was a derelict fortress, others that it was a weapon left behind by a dead species. A few spoke of visions and songs drifting on open comms, voices in strange tongues that carried across the void like ghostly transmissions. Within weeks, fleets began to move. The Guild of Navigators dispatched scouts, eager to claim anything that might grant them mastery of lost routes. The Dominion sent war frigates, declaring the nebula a restricted military zone. Even the distant Concord stirred, though its diplomats spoke only of ensuring stability. To every power, the promise of a human relic was irresistible. For the storm was both expected and terrifying. He and his small circle of allies continued their study of the ship, documenting what they could, but each day the tension grew. Patrols were sighted near the nebula's edge. Strange signals attempted to break into the ship's systems, and always the vessel itself seemed aware, responding only in fragments, as if weighing who was worthy of its secrets. One night, as stood beneath the projected constellations in the great chamber, the Corps' voice addressed him again. "They will come, they will demand, they will fight, this is what we foresaw." Asked, his voice quiet, "Why leave such a gift in the path of those who would misuse it?" The reply was both gentle and unyielding. "Because memory must be tested. Legacy is not given, it is chosen." Outside, the gathering storm intensified. Reports reached group through smuggler contacts. Entire armadas were preparing to converge. Some sought power, others feared what might happen if rivals obtained the vessel. Few cared about humanity's legacy. To most, it was an opportunity or a threat. Packing in frustration, finally confronted. "We need to leave before the fleets arrive. Once they see us here, we'll be caught in the crossfire. You think they'll let a scholar and a handful of exiles walk away with knowledge of this place?" But could not turn back. If we leave now, the ship falls into their hands and humanity's legacy becomes nothing more than another weapon. We've seen what it holds. We can't let that happen. Swore under his breath but said no more. Perhaps he too had been touched by the ship's song. The Allies argued late into the night, some insisting they should seal the ship and hide it again, others urging to reveal it to all and hope truth outweighed greed. In the end, no decision was reached. The storm was moving faster than their debate. Days later, the first hostile fleet arrived. Dozens of warships breached the nebula's outer veil, their lights cutting through the mist like blades. Messages blared on open frequencies, demanding surrender of the vessel, claiming ownership in the name of empires that had once sworn humanity's name would never be spoken again. The ship responded not with weapons but with silence. Its core pulsed calmly, as if waiting. Stood at the heart of the vessel, watching the intruding signals flash across the displays. For the first time, fear clawed at him. He had glimpsed humanity's brilliance, but now he saw clearly why the galaxy had chosen to bury it. Humanity had been more than resilient. They had been disruptive, an idea that refused to die. And an idea could be more dangerous than any fleet. The nebula shook as more ships entered, rival factions clashing in the mists. Skirmishes erupted, each side determined to be the first to reach the heart of the vessel. Explosions echoed faintly through the void, their shockwaves rattling ship where it remained docked. The storm had arrived. Inside, the crystalline core dimmed, then flared once more. Words appeared across the walls, unmistakable and final. Test of worth commencing, awaiting the choice of those who stand within. Stared at the message, his breath shallow. The ship was no longer a passive vault. It was awakening in full, preparing to decide what legacy would be given, or from the galaxy. And a single scholar who had followed forbidden whispers now stood at the center of a storm that could reshape history. The storm outside grew louder with each passing hour. The nebula blazed with the light of conflict as rival fleets exchanged fire, their weapons cutting through the mists. Every empire that had sworn to forget humanity now fought desperately for the chance to seize its last relic. Inside the vessel, the contrast was striking. The great chamber was calm, its crystalline core pulsing with steady rhythm, as though untouched by the chaos beyond. Holograms shimmered faintly along the walls, faces of humanity watching, waiting, silent witnesses to the moment unfolding. Stood at the center, his allies gathered around him. Their voices echoed with urgency. "We must seal the ship," urged the linguist. "Hide it again before the fleets breach the bay. If they cannot find it, the storm will burn itself out." The salvager shook her head fiercely. "Seal it and the fighting will never end. They'll search forever, tearing the galaxy apart piece by piece. No, this ship must choose someone to control it. Better us than them." The historian, eyes hollow, whispered another view. To reveal it would be to shatter the conquered's lies. Every empire would see what was stolen from memory. That could inspire, or it could destroy. The weight of their words pressed down on. He understood what none of them dared to say aloud. The decision was not theirs alone. The ship itself had awakened, demanding a choice. The crystalline core flared suddenly, and the chamber filled with light. A voice spoke, resonant and clear. "Humanity entrusted this vessel to those who carry their spirit. Courage, curiosity, unity. Will you bear this legacy or abandon it to silence?" The chamber shook as another explosion rocked the nebula. Enemy ships were drawing closer, forcing their way through the interference. His hand hovered near his blaster. "They'll be here any moment. Decide, scholar, now." Closed his eyes, steadying his breath. He thought of the merchant who spoke of human defiance, the admiral who admitted their unyielding resolve, the music and art that still lingered in the walls of this vessel. Humanity's legacy was not just power. It was persistence, the refusal to yield when logic said defeat was certain. That realization struck him with clarity. The galaxy had tried to bury humans because they could not be controlled. Their true power was not weapons, but the ability to inspire, to challenge, to reshape the order of things simply by existing. The voice of the core repeated, softer this time. "Will you carry us forward?" Raised his head. "Yes, but not as a weapon, not as a prize, as memory and as a promise." The core pulsed brighter, streams of light flowing outward. The walls trembled, and the entire ship seemed to awaken fully for the first time in centuries. Engines rumbled, power surged, and the docked vessel beneath them shuddered with sudden force. Across the galaxy, fleets paused as the ship emerged from the nebula, radiant against the dark. Its hull glowed with patterns of light, symbols of humanity spreading like constellations. The warring factions ceased fire, stunned by the sight of the vessel no myth could truly describe. Inside, the voice spoke once more. "Choice accepted. Provisional custodian recognized, legacy projection initiating." Felt the shift immediately. The ship's systems flared outward, broadcasting not weapons but memory. Waves of information surged into the void, music, stories, visions of human life. Every fleet that had come to fight received it, every crew flooded with the essence of a species the galaxy had tried to erase. On warship bridges, admirals stared in silence as human laughter and songs echoed through their halls. Soldiers paused, their weapons lowered as visions of human resilience filled their minds. Even in the depths of enemy flagships, hardened leaders stood frozen, confronted not by threat, but by legacy. Whispered in awe, "You've done it, you've given them back to the galaxy." But knew it was not over. Outside, the storm had paused, but the fleets had not vanished. Some would see the vessel as inspiration. Others would still hunger for its power. The decision to reveal it carried risk beyond measure. The core's final words echoed in his mind. "Legacy is a flame, it may guide or it may burn. The choice is not ours alone, it is yours and theirs." As the great ship drifted forward, shining like a star reborn, understood the truth. He had chosen to carry humanity's legacy, but what the galaxy did with that legacy remained uncertain. And perhaps that uncertainty was the most human choice of all. The great vessel drifted from the nebula like a dawn breaking across the void. Its radiant hull cast ripples of light through the mist, symbols of Earth glowing brighter than any fleet's beacon. For centuries, the galaxy had silenced humanity's name. Now it blazed across the stars, undeniable. Every ship in the storm fell quiet. War frigates, guild cruisers, even conquered battleships all ceased their fire as the legacy projections surged across their systems. Not a weapon, not a threat, but a cascade of memory. On a bridge, an admiral froze as a vision his mind. He stood on a green hill beneath a wide blue sky, wind rushing through grass as children laughed and ran past him. He felt the warmth of a sun long gone, the taste of air filled with promise. The image faded, leaving his heart strangely heavy. A conquered captain, hardened by years of diplomacy, blinked as her console filled with human voices debating, laughing, dreaming of futures unbound by law. She felt a spark she had not known since her youth, when she first believed in discovery. Even the pirates, mercenaries, and scavengers who had come for spoils sat stunned. Instead of fear, they felt curiosity. Instead of greed, they felt wonder. Humanity's echo spread across every deck, every mind unraveling centuries of silence with a flood of memory too vivid to deny. Inside the vessel stood trembling beneath the crystalline core. He could feel the weight of the broadcast flowing outward, the ship using him as its chosen custodian. He did not control it. He simply bore witness as humanity revealed itself to the galaxy once more. Leaned on a railing, shaking his head in disbelief. You realize what you've unleashed? They'll never be able to bury this again. Every ship here, every soul, it's burned into them now. Nodded, that was the point. Humanity knew their memory would be feared, but they also knew it would endure. The core's voice echoed softly, filled with quiet pride. We are remembered, not as conquerors, not as ghosts, but as ourselves. Beyond the nebula, the reaction was far from unified. Some ships powered down their weapons entirely, unwilling to fight after witnessing the projection. Others, however, clung to their ambitions. A handful of fleets began maneuvering again, determined to seize the vessel despite its message. The historian amongst allies whispered, "Here it comes, the test. Will they honor what they've seen or fall back into greed?" But the ship itself seemed prepared. The core flared, sending one final wave of projection through the nebula. This time it was not memory of the past, but possibility. Images of futures unfolded, worlds healed instead of, alliances forged instead of broken, children of different species learning side by side. And woven among those visions was humanity's constant refrain, there is no such thing as impossible. The fleets hesitated, weapons wavered. For a moment the storm held its breath. Then in an act no one expected, a single small vessel broke formation. A young navigator from the guild transmitted a message across all channels. I will not fire on this ship, not after what I've seen." His voice shook, but it carried weight. Others soon followed, declaring their refusal to turn memory into conquest. One by one, ships powered down their weapons. Not all, some commanders still hungered for control. Yet even among them, doubt gnawed at their resolve. To strike at the vessel now would mean striking at the very idea of what humanity had been. And that, more than any weapon, was unbearable. The storm did not vanish entirely, but it fractured. The galaxy had been given a choice, and though some still reached for power, many more chose inspiration. Humanity's echo had begun reshaping thought, rippling outward like waves across a sea. Inside the vessel, lowered his head, a weight both heavy and liberating settling on his shoulders. He had not simply uncovered history. He had carried it forward. He had become the bridge between a vanished species and a galaxy that had once feared them. Gave a dry laugh. "So, scholar, what now? You going to become the voice of a dead species?" Looked to the glowing constellations projected above, his heart steady. "Not dead," he said softly. "Alive in every memory they left us, alive in what we choose to become because of them." The ship rumbled gently, its engines awakening fully at last. It did not launch an attack, nor did it flee. It simply moved forward into open space, radiant and unyielding, a reminder, a promise, a star reborn. Across the galaxy, the name of humanity could no longer be silenced. It had become more than a word, more than a species. It had become a story carried in the hearts of those who heard the echo. And stories, once spoken, could never be banished again.